The unseen threat approaches. Earth floated silently in the cold darkness of space, a small blue gem in the vast emptiness. To most of the galaxy, it was an unimportant world, a primitive planet barely worth mentioning. But to the Galactic Empire, Earth was a problem that needed to be erased. Admiral Carthon stood tall on the bridge of his command ship, the Imperial juggernaut, Dreadfang. His golden armor gleamed under the dim light of the ship's control room. His sharp, reptilian eyes watched the holographic display in front of him. It showed Earth, spinning slowly, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Behind him, rows of Imperial officers stood at attention, waiting for orders. The fleet was ready. 10,000 warships, each one powerful enough to wipe out a continent, surrounded the planet. It was the largest armada the Empire had ever deployed for a single assault. But to Carthon, this was not war. This was an extermination. Have they responded to our demand for surrender? Carthon asked, his voice calm but filled with cruelty. One of the officers checked the data screen and hesitated. No, Admiral, the humans are silent. Carthon's lips curled into a smirk. Foolish creatures. They should be begging for mercy. Then we begin. Prepare the orbital bombardment, he ordered. At that moment, an alarm beeped on the command console. The officer's face turned pale. Admiral, we have detected an unknown energy signature. Carthon frowned. Explain. The officer hesitated before answering. It's coming from Earth's ocean. A massive power reading. It wasn't there before. The Admiral's amusement faded. He turned toward the large display screen, which now showed a bright red energy spike rising from the depths of Earth's waters. The readings were impossible. No civilization at Earth's technological level should be able to produce such energy. Enlarge the display, Carthon commanded. The screen zoomed in, focusing on the Atlantic Ocean. And then they saw it. A massive structure was emerging from the water. The surface of the ocean split apart, revealing a shape so large that waves crashed violently around it. At first, it looked like an island rising from the deep. But as it continued to ascend, it became clear this was a ship unlike anything in the Empire's database. Its black metallic hull stretched for miles, dwarfing even the largest Imperial battleships. Weapons lined its exterior, glowing with blue and red energy. It was shaped like a supercarrier, but far more advanced, sleek, deadly, and terrifying. The ship's surface shimmered, as if it had been hidden beneath some kind of cloaking field. The moment it fully emerged, the energy signature spiked to an even greater level, far beyond anything the Empire had encountered. Carthon clenched his fists. What is that? The officer gulped. Unknown, Admiral, but it's locking onto us. For the first time in his long military career, Carthon felt something he had never felt before. Fear. On Earth, the awakening of Project Revenant. Deep inside a heavily fortified underground command center, General Elias Graves stood with his arms crossed, watching the events unfold on a massive holographic screen. He was an old soldier, hardened by decades of war, but today, even he felt the weight of history. Around him, the control room was filled with top military officials, engineers, and scientists, all staring at the screen with silent anticipation. The Revenant, Earth's last line of defense, their secret weapon, had finally been activated. For years, humanity had known that one day the Empire would come. Earth had been a growing nuisance to the galactic powers, a species that refused to kneel. The warnings had been clear. The threats had been made. So humanity prepared. Hidden beneath the Atlantic Ocean, in an undisclosed location, they had built something that defied imagination, a supercarrier beyond the Empire's understanding, a warship unlike any other, a ghost in the dark. And now, as it broke free from its underwater prison, it was ready to do what it was built for: destroy the enemy. Status report, General Graves demanded. An officer in a crisp uniform responded quickly. The Revenant is fully operational. Weapons are online. Stealth drive is ready. Shields at full capacity. Graves nodded. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. Send the Empire a message. The communications officer pressed a button. A transmission was sent directly to Admiral Carthon's fleet. No threats, no pleasantries, just 3 simple words. You shouldn't have come. Back on the Empire's flagship, the message appeared on the main screen of Dreadfang's bridge. Carthon read the words, his face darkening with anger. This is a bluff, he growled. Destroy that ship. His command was obeyed instantly. The Empire's warships aimed their cannons at the Revenant. Massive energy weapons charged, and within seconds, 1,000 beams of destruction fired toward the newly surfaced Supercarrier. The blast should have been enough to vaporize a planet. But something impossible happened. The moment the energy beams touched the Revenant, they vanished. Carthon's eyes widened. His fleet had fired everything, and yet, the ship remained untouched. The Revenant hovered silently in the air, unmoving. Then, its weapons came to life. A deep, ominous hum filled the battlefield as massive railguns, pulse cannons, and experimental energy weapons locked onto the Imperial fleet. Then, it fired. Carthon had no time to react. One of his largest battleships, the Imperial Warlord, was hit by a single railgun shot, and in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Not damaged, not crippled, completely disintegrated. The Admiral's blood ran cold. This was no ordinary ship. This was something else, something monstrous, something designed to kill empires. And for the first time, the hunter realized he was the prey. The hidden Supercarrier awakens. A deadly silence fell over the battlefield. The void of space, once filled with the distant hum of Imperial warships preparing for conquest, now crackled with a new presence, an unseen force, something that had been hidden from the galaxy for far too long. The Revenant hovered in low orbit, its massive, angular hull still dripping with water vapor as it fully emerged from Earth's ocean. It was unlike anything the Galactic Empire had ever faced. The metallic surface of the ship gleamed under the light of Earth's sun, reflecting a strange, dark energy that shimmered unnaturally. This was not just another battleship. This was something else. Something terrifying. Admiral Carthon's scaled hands tightened into fists as he watched the impossible unfold. His entire fleet, minus 10,000 warships strong, had fired a coordinated strike, an attack that could reduce entire planets to dust. And yet, the Revenant stood unarmed. Not a scratch, not even a flicker of its shields. The officers aboard Carthon's flagship, the Dreadfang, whispered among themselves, confusion and dread creeping into their voices. They had fought countless wars. They had crushed thousands of civilizations. But never, never had they seen a ship simply ignore an entire fleet's bombardment. Carthon growled, snapping his officers back to attention. Scan that ship. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The Empire's advanced scanners immediately went to work, analyzing every inch of the Revenant's hull. Numbers flashed on the screens. Data poured in. And then, the scanners crashed. Every system aboard the Dreadfang froze for 3.6 seconds, a lifetime in battle. The bridge went dark before emergency lights flickered back on. Officers scrambled to restore systems. Carthon's reptilian eyes narrowed. Report. One of his engineers turned pale. Admiral, the ship's hull is composed of an unknown material. It absorbs energy-based scans and reflects kinetic signatures in ways we don't understand. Carthon's claws clicked against his command console. Meaning. The officer swallowed. Meaning, we have no idea what that thing is made of. A cold wave of realization spread through the bridge. Carthon's fangs bared in frustration. We've crushed entire civilizations, erased star systems from history. This primitive world cannot have built something so powerful. Yet there it was, floating before them like a god of war, silent and unmoving. And then it spoke. A deep mechanical voice echoed through every Imperial ship, overriding communications, blasting through every speaker. "You are trespassing in Terran space. You will leave immediately, or you will be destroyed." The Empire's officers froze. Never, never had an Empire ship been hacked so easily. Their firewalls, their encrypted channels, their entire fleet-wide comms taken over in an instant. But Carthon was not a creature that allowed fear to cloud his mind. He was a warrior, a conqueror, and he would not bow to Earth. He straightened, his voice sharp. "Send a counter-command. Break their hold on our comms." The comms officer furiously typed in override codes, resetting encryption, rerouting frequencies. But no matter what he tried, the Revenant's voice remained. "You have been warned." Then the Revenant vanished. One moment, it was there, a massive, towering warship, and in the blink of an eye, it was gone. No hyperspace jump, no thruster activation, no energy signature. It simply disappeared. Carthon's hands slammed against the command console. "Where did it go?" The sensor officer's voice shook. I don't know, Admiral. No readings, no trace of it anywhere." And then, the first Imperial battleship exploded. The first strike. Humanity's revenge begins. A bright flash erupted in the void as the Imperial battleship Imperator's Wrath was ripped apart by an unseen force. There was no missile, no energy beam, no explosion from within. It was as if something had simply erased half the ship from existence. The front half of the battleship, gone, completely missing. The remaining half floated lifelessly, sparks flickering in the blackness of space, before secondary explosions tore through its remaining structure. The Dreadfang's bridge was in chaos. Officers shouted over one another, scrambling to locate the enemy, but there was nothing. And then, another ship exploded, and another. One by one, massive Imperial warships vanished in bursts of silent destruction. The Revenant was hunting them. It moved unseen, undetected. It struck without warning, without mercy. Inside the Empire's flagship, Carthon watched in horror as his mighty fleet, the greatest armada ever assembled, was torn apart by a single ship. His voice was sharp, desperate. "Find it. Now." And then, finally, a glimpse. For just a moment, a flicker of movement appeared on the Dreadfang scanners. A shadow. A ghostly outline of something impossibly fast, moving between the wreckage of destroyed battleships. A terrifying realization hit Carthon. It wasn't just the Revenant's weapons that were deadly. It was its speed. In that brief moment, before the Revenant disappeared again, Carthon saw the impossible. It wasn't just a supercarrier. It was a warship that could move faster than anything in the Empire's history. A warship that could not be tracked. A warship that did not obey the laws of physics. Carthon's blood ran cold. "We have to retreat." The words burned his pride. But even he could see it now. This was not a battle. This was a slaughter. But it was already too late, because the Revenant had just locked onto the Dreadfang. And there would be no mercy. Humanity's secret weapon strikes. The Dreadfang, once the pride of the Galactic Empire's armada, now stood alone in the black void of space, surrounded by the wreckage of its fallen fleet. Fires raged in the distance where thousands of warships had once stood, reduced to floating debris. The Imperial fleet, once the most powerful force in the known galaxy, was now nothing but burning ruins and drifting corpses. Admiral Carthon's sharp, reptilian claws gripped the command console so tightly that the metal beneath his hands buckled under the pressure. His cold, golden eyes darted between the chaos outside and the scrambled sensor screens inside. His fleet, his mighty, unstoppable fleet, was being torn apart by a single human warship, the Revenant. It was still nowhere to be seen. It was a ghost, a phantom. It flickered in and out of existence, striking with precision, tearing through Imperial ships like a predator among prey. And now, it was coming for him. The unstoppable predator. Admiral, the Revenant has reappeared, directly ahead. Carthon's eyes snapped to the forward viewport. And there it was, a black monolith in the darkness. It hovered silently, like a god of war staring down its enemies. Unlike the Empire's sleek, golden warships, the Revenant's hull was cold, dark, and unforgiving. It was covered in unknown plating, pulsating with deep red and blue lights, as if something inside was alive. Carthon could feel it now. This ship wasn't just built for war. It was built to erase empires. The Revenant did not fire. It did not move. It simply waited, daring them to act. Fire. Fire every thing. Carthon roared. The Dreadfang unleashed its full arsenal, planet-cracking railguns, plasma torpedoes, quantum disruptors. The shots thundered through space, illuminating the void with the power to shatter moons. But the Revenant did not move. It simply let the attacks come. And then, the moment the energy blasts touched its hull, they vanished. Absorbed, not deflected, not repelled. Simply erased from existence. Gasps filled the bridge. The Dreadfang's crew watched in horror as their ultimate weapons, the firepower that had destroyed entire worlds, did absolutely nothing. Carthon felt a deep primal fear clawing at his mind. Impossible. And then the Revenant moved. One moment, it was hovering in place. The next, it was right in front of them. It crossed the battlefield in an instant, faster than any Imperial ship could even react. It was inside their defenses, too close to escape. And then, the Revenant fired. The wrath of the Revenant. A single shot. A railgun blast so powerful it bent space-time itself. The Dreadfang shields capable of withstanding supernova explosions, shattered like glass. The entire ship shook violently, alarms blaring as a chunk of the hull was torn away instantly. The impact sent the flagship spinning, crew members thrown from their stations, flames bursting from broken conduits. Carthon slammed against the wall, the breath knocked out of him. That was just one shot. His ship couldn't survive another. Damage report. He bellowed, forcing himself up. The bridge was chaos. Smoke filled the air, officers scrambling to contain the damage. Admiral. A wounded officer clutched his console, voice shaking. We've lost engines. Shields are down. Hull integrity is failing. Carthon snarled. He refused to die here. Prepare a boarding party. We're taking that ship from the inside. If the Revenant couldn't be destroyed from the outside, then perhaps they could seize control of it. He turned to his best warriors, the Empire's elite Void Reavers, genetically enhanced super soldiers, clad in power armor forged from neutron steel. You will board that ship and bring me its core, Carthon growled. Whatever power they're using, we will take it for ourselves. The Void Reavers slammed their fists against their chests in salute. It will be done, Admiral. Within moments, boarding pods launched from the damaged Dreadfang, streaking across space toward the Revenant. And as Carthon watched his soldiers disappear into the enemy ship's darkness, a cruel smile formed on his face. Let's see what horrors these humans have inside. Inside the Revenant, the nightmare begins. The Void Reavers crashed into the Revenant's hull, their boarding pods cutting into its surface with molten drills. The airlocks burst open, and the soldiers stormed inside. Their helmets scanned the interior, their weapons locked and ready. The halls were empty. Silent. Too silent. One of the Reavers stepped forward, gripping his plasma rifle. Spread out. Sweep the area. They moved through the corridors, their boots echoing in the darkness. The ship's design was unlike anything they had seen. Smooth, cold metal, lined with glowing veins of blue energy. Something's wrong, one of them muttered. Then, the lights flickered, and the whispers began. Deep, distorted voices crawled through their helmets. You shouldn't have come. The soldiers froze. Check your comms, one of them ordered. We're getting interference. And then, the walls moved. Black tendrils shot out from the corridors, wrapping around the first soldier, pulling him into the shadows. He didn't even have time to scream. Then, from the darkness, a shape emerged. It was human, or at least, it used to be. Cybernetic enhancements fused with its flesh, wires pulsing where veins should be, cold metal where skin once existed. It looked at them with glowing red eyes. And then, it smiled. Welcome aboard. The lights flickered again, and the screaming began. On the Dreadfang, Carthun's worst nightmare. The transmission from the Void Reavers cut to static. Carthun's cold blood turned to ice. What's happening? Report. Silence. Then the Revenant's voice came over his ship's speakers again. Your soldiers are adapting. Carthun's eyes widened. What have you done? There was a pause. And then, you wanted to see what's inside. Now you are part of it. And then, the Revenant turned its weapons toward the Dreadfang. This battle was over. The only thing left was annihilation. The Galactic Empire's desperate counterattack. The Dreadfang was dying. Alarms wailed across the Empire's flagship. Smoke filled the air. Sparks rained from shattered control panels, and terrified officers scrambled to contain the chaos. Outside, the once mighty Imperial Armada lay in ruins, its warships reduced to drifting wreckage. The Revenant stood alone, an unmovable titan, its dark hull gleaming with a cold mechanical hunger. It had not taken a single scratch, and now it was staring directly at them. Admiral Carthun staggered forward, gripping the edge of his command console as the floor beneath him trembled. He had fought 100 battles, crushed entire civilizations beneath the Empire's boot. He had never known defeat. Until today. He snarled, baring his fangs at the holographic display in front of him. His elite Void Reaver soldiers had boarded the Revenant minutes ago, yet all communications had gone dark. Can anyone raise the boarding party? He demanded. Silence. Then, static, and a sound, a voice, a deep, distorted whisper. They are one with us now. Carthun's golden eyes widened in horror. What? Before he could react, his main view screen flickered to life. A video feed. The inside of the Revenant. The corridor was bathed in eerie blue light, pulsing like a living organism. The camera was shaking, moving erratically, as if held by someone running for their life. A Void Reaver, his armor scorched, his helmet cracked, sprinted down the hallway, panting heavily. Behind him, something followed. A figure twisted in the shadows, its shape almost human, but wrong. The flesh and metal of its body shifted unnaturally, as if it could not decide what form to take. Red, glowing eyes burned in the dark. The soldier screamed. His gun fired wildly, plasma bolts illuminating the corridor. The figure did not slow down. Then, the feed cut to black. Carthun's claws dug into the metal railing. His elite soldiers, genetically enhanced warriors, the Empire's finest, had just been consumed. Something inside the Revenant was alive. And now it had his men. A cold, creeping horror spread through the bridge. The officers stared at him, waiting for orders. They were looking to him for hope. But there was no hope. Not unless they did the impossible. Not unless they killed the Revenant. Carthun exhaled sharply, forcing down his fear. He had one last card to play. One final gambit. He turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the Doomsday Lance. The officer's breath hitched. Admiral, that weapon hasn't been tested. Do it, Carthun roared. The officer obeyed. The Doomsday Lance. The Empire's last hope. Deep in the Dreadfang's lower decks, an ancient weapon system came online. It had been forbidden by the Empire's own warlords, a relic of a war so old that even Carthun's ancestors feared it. The Doomsday Lance. A single-shot weapon, forbidden because of its power. A weapon designed to pierce the fabric of reality itself. It required an entire star's worth of energy to fire. And now it was charging up. Power conduits glowed with unstable energy as the ship shuddered from the force of the weapon preparing to unleash its fury. A red beam of antimatter energy began forming at the Dreadfang's bow. "Admiral," the weapons officer said, voice shaking, "the weapon is ready." Carthun's eyes narrowed. "This is our only chance." He raised a clawed hand. "Fire." The Revenant's response. The Doomsday Lance fired. A beam of pure destruction erupted from the Dreadfang's bow, tearing through space like a spear thrown by a god. It ripped through the void, bending reality around it. The moment it touched the Revenant, something happened. The Revenant did not dodge. It did not raise shields. It absorbed the beam. The entire ship pulsed with unnatural energy as the Doomsday Lance's raw power was devoured by the Revenant's core. The energy, meant to shatter planets, was being consumed. And then, it fired back. A single counterattack. Not a railgun, not a missile. A pulse. A silent wave of energy rippled from the Revenant's hull, sweeping outward, passing through every Imperial ship still standing. And wherever the wave touched, systems failed. Engines died. Weapons shut down. The entire Dreadfang's power grid collapsed instantly. Lights flickered and died. The once mighty flagship of the Empire was now a floating corpse in space. The officers on the bridge stared in shock as their screens went dark. Total power failure. No engines, no shields, no weapons. Carthun's breath hitched. What have we done? The Revenant's final judgment. From the silent, dark hull of the Revenant, a new energy signature appeared. It was different. It was not a weapon. It was a message. The Revenant hacked into the Empire's systems, broadcasting its voice not just to the Dreadfang, but across the entire galaxy. Your empire is broken. Your fleet is gone. This is not a negotiation. Leave this sector and never return, or Earth will finish what it has started. The signal was transmitted to every known world, every empire, every species, every government. Everyone in the galaxy now knew what had happened. And then the Revenant vanished again. One moment, it was there. The next, it was gone. Carthun collapsed into his chair, defeated. This was not war. This was a warning. And the entire galaxy had just heard it. The final showdown. The Dreadfang drifted helplessly in the black void of space. The once mighty flagship of the Galactic Empire, the crown jewel of its unstoppable armada, was now nothing more than a powerless wreck. Its engines were dead. Its shields had collapsed. Its weapons were useless. And worst of all, the Revenant was still there. Admiral Carthun slumped in his command chair, his body rigid with disbelief. The Empire's greatest weapon, the Doomsday Lance, a weapon meant to rip holes through reality itself, had been fired at the Revenant. It had done nothing. No, that wasn't right. It had done something. It had fed it. The Revenant had absorbed the Doomsday Lance's energy as if it had merely drunk a glass of water. And then it had retaliated with a single pulse of power, a silent, invisible wave that shut down every system across the entire battlefield. The once mighty fleet of the Galactic Empire minus 10,000 warships strong had been reduced to nothing in minutes. Carthun had faced defeat before, but this was annihilation. A slow, sickening realization crept into his mind. This wasn't just a battle. This was a lesson. And Earth was the teacher. Admiral Carthun, the Empire's greatest warlord, was dead. And now, the Empire itself stood on the brink of collapse. The Empire in chaos. News of the battle spread like wildfire across the stars. The Emperor himself, Zalvok the Eternal, sat upon his golden throne in the heart of the imperial capital, his cold, reptilian eyes scanning the devastating reports flashing across the holographic displays in his throne room. It was impossible. Carthon's fleet had been the Empire's strongest force, meant to crush Earth in a single strike. But instead, it had been annihilated. Without warning, without resistance, without mercy. The warlords gathered around him, their expressions shifting between disbelief and barely concealed terror. "We must strike back," one of them hissed, slamming his clawed fist against the table. "We cannot let these humans make fools of us." But another warlord shook his head. His voice was softer, but drenched in fear. "You don't understand," he whispered. "They didn't just win. They sent a message." The others turned toward him. "What message?" the Emperor demanded. The warlord's eyes flickered with terror as he pulled up a recorded transmission, the Revenant's final warning, sent to every known world. "Your empire is broken. Your fleet is gone. This is not a negotiation. Leave this sector and never return, or Earth will finish what it has started." The words hung in the air like the last breath of a dying god. The silence was deafening. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire felt something it had never known before. Fear. The silent war begins. For weeks after the battle, the Empire did nothing. The remaining warlords argued in secret. Some wanted revenge, calling for a new grand crusade against Earth. Others whispered a darker truth, that the Empire had finally met its match. That perhaps they were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. And so, instead of declaring war, the Empire did something it had never done before. It went silent. No Imperial ships dared enter human-controlled space. No spies were sent to Earth. No threats. No retaliation. Nothing. It was as if the Empire no longer wished to acknowledge what had happened. And in the shadows of the galaxy, something even more terrifying began. The other galactic civilizations, the ones that had long feared the Empire's wrath, began to whisper. If humans could defeat the Empire, then perhaps they could end its reign forever. Earth's hidden hand. In the depths of space, far from prying eyes, a hidden council gathered. They were not politicians. They were not military leaders. They were something far older, far more dangerous. They were the architects of the Revenant. Inside a vast station, cloaked in the darkness of a dead star, a single figure stood before a massive screen. A man, aged, sharp-eyed, his body lined with cybernetic enhancements more advanced than anything known to the rest of the galaxy. General Elias Graves. Behind him, the true masterminds of Earth's power, scientists, strategists, and visionaries, watched the latest intelligence reports flood in. The Empire was weakening. The galaxy was changing. And humanity was now at the center of it all. One of the strategists, a woman with silver eyes and a voice like steel, stepped forward. "The Empire is fractured," she said. "Its fleets are in disarray. Warlords are turning against each other." Graves nodded. He had expected this. "What about the Council of Worlds?" he asked. The strategist's expression darkened. "They're watching, waiting. They've always feared the Empire, but now..." She hesitated. "Now some of them want to align with us." Graves raised an eyebrow. Unexpected. For centuries, the Council of Worlds, a loose alliance of powerful alien civilizations, had stayed neutral in the Empire's wars. They feared retaliation. But now, with Earth's unexpected victory, everything was changing. "They think we're strong enough," Graves muttered. "They think we can win a war that's been brewing for centuries." The strategist hesitated. "Should we?" Graves exhaled, his cybernetic fingers tapping against the steel table. Was Earth ready for a galactic war? The Revenant had proved humanity's strength. But the Empire was still dangerous, still desperate. And a desperate enemy was the most unpredictable kind. Finally, Graves spoke. His voice was calm, but filled with cold resolve. "We don't start wars," he said. He turned toward the screen, watching as the Empire's forces crumbled under their own paranoia. "But we finish them. The Empire's last move. But even as the Empire collapsed, even as it lost power, it had one final secret left to play. Deep in the forgotten edges of the galaxy, beyond the reach of Earth's spies, a single black ship drifted through the void, its hull covered in ancient markings. Inside, a creature stirred. Not imperial, not human. Something older. Something the Empire had locked away for 10,000 years. And now it had been unleashed. A message was sent. A final, desperate call. A transmission laced with code so ancient that even the Empire's own warlords no longer understood them. It echoed through space, passing through dimensions unknown, reaching into the coldest corners of existence. And something answered. Something that should have stayed buried. Something that even the Galactic Empire had once feared. For if humanity was a predator, then this was the nightmare it had yet to face. Humanity's message to the galaxy. The galaxy stood on the brink of a new era. The Galactic Empire, once feared across the stars, was now fractured. Its warlords turned on one another, its fleets in disarray, its reputation shattered by a single human warship, the Revenant. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire had been defeated. And yet, even in its broken state, the Empire was not finished. Because deep within the forgotten voids of space, beyond the ruins of its fallen fleets, something old and unnatural had awakened. Something the Empire itself had feared. Something never meant to be seen again. And now, it was coming for Earth. The forgotten horror. In the desolate corners of the universe, a prison station drifted through the void, hidden from time itself. This was Vault Omega, the Empire's darkest secret. It had no guards, no defenses, no fleet to protect it, because nothing inside was meant to leave. For millennia, the Empire had buried its mistakes here, creatures too dangerous to control, weapons too powerful to unleash, experiments that should have never existed. And inside its deepest vault, something stirred. A beacon had been activated, a call for vengeance sent by the last survivors of the Empire's ruling class, a desperate summoning of a force that had once nearly destroyed the galaxy itself. The seals of Vault Omega cracked open. A figure rose from the darkness. Its form was shifting, impossible to define, something between flesh, metal, and energy itself. It was not alive. It was not dead. It was something else, and it had heard the Empire's call. Its red eyes burned in the void. And in an instant, Vault Omega was gone. Destroyed. Not by fire. Not by explosion. But by a single will commanding reality itself to forget it had ever existed. And the nightmare began its journey toward Earth. Earth prepares for the unknown. On Earth, inside the hidden war command of Project Revenant, General Elias Graves stood before a massive holographic display, his cybernetic fingers tapping against the steel table. The galaxy had gone silent. The Empire's warlords were too afraid to retaliate. The Council of Worlds was watching, waiting to see Earth's next move. And yet, something felt wrong. Graves had spent his life fighting battles. He had seen the depths of war and had made decisions that shaped the future of humanity. But now, something deep in his bones told him this wasn't over. He turned to his intelligence officer, a woman with silver cybernetic implants in her skull, her gaze sharp and focused. "What's the latest?" Graves asked. The officer hesitated, then brought up an intercepted transmission, encrypted, ancient, and nearly impossible to decipher. Nearly. The Revenant's AI had cracked it. The message flashed across the screen. Vogeld Omega compromised. Entity unknown. Trajectory. Soul system. The room went silent. Graves felt his stomach turn. Vault Omega. The Empire's darkest prison. A place so secret that even Earth's spies had never uncovered its location. And something had escaped. Something that was now coming directly for them. Graves' voice was calm, but his eyes burned with cold intensity. "How long until it arrives?" The officer checked the calculations. Her face paled. Less than 3 days. The Revenant's final battle begins. For the first time, the Revenant was not the hunter. It was the hunted. The warship hovered in deep space, its crew silent and focused. Every weapon was fully charged. Every system was running at maximum efficiency. And yet, they still did not know what they were about to face. Inside the command center, Graves stood alongside Commander Alex Vaughn, the ship's captain. A battle-hardened warrior, Vaughn had seen more wars than most men had years in their lives. And now, he was about to fight the most dangerous enemy yet. "We don't know what it is," Vaughn muttered, his arms crossed. "But if the Empire buried it, they must have been afraid of it." Graves nodded. "And that's what worries me the most." The Revenant's AI, ONYX, spoke, its deep mechanical voice filling the room. "Unknown entity APPROHE AT high velocity. Estimated size. NDT or manable. Energy signature. Unamated." Graves exhaled slowly. "Send a transmission." "To who?" Vaughn asked. "To everyone." Within moments, Earth's message echoed across the stars, reaching every empire, every government, every civilization watching from the shadows. A message that no one had ever expected to hear. To all sentient species of the galaxy. "We have shattered the Empire's fleets. We have defied their rule. And now, we face something even they feared. We do not know its nature. We do not know its limits. But we know one thing. We will not kneel. We will not run. We will fight. And if this thing threatens not just Earth, but the galaxy itself, then we will end it." The message spread across the cosmos like wildfire, and in the darkness of space, many alien species, some long oppressed by the Empire, began to wonder something new. Perhaps humanity was not just fighting for itself anymore. Perhaps this was something bigger. Perhaps this was the beginning of something new. The final hour. The Revenant waited in orbit of Jupiter, its weapons locked onto deep space. And then, the darkness moved. A shape, shifting, impossible to define, rippled into existence. It was neither a ship nor a creature. It was something in between. It folded reality as it moved, tearing through space like a wound that refused to heal. And in that moment, Graves and Vaughn understood why the Empire had locked it away. This wasn't just a weapon. This wasn't just a horror. This was a mistake that had never been meant to be seen again. A deep, resonating voice echoed inside their minds, as if it did not speak with sound, but with the very fabric of existence. "Humanity, you were not meant to exist. And now you will be undone." The Revenant's engines roared. Graves' eyes burned with fire. He raised a single hand. Fire. Everything. And the final battle began.